Hello, everybody. Kay Crystal Griffith here, and welcome back for your daily digest for all of 2021 to emotions, wisdom, and your body. Every day, we're going to talk for about 15 to 20 minutes on the effects of emotions on your body, soul, and spirit, mind you. And remember, emotions are body wisdom. So we can learn so much from how our emotions are interacting with our body. So here's your disclaimer. I am not a doctor. I do not play one on TV or any social media platform. I'm a researcher. I also have a master's in education, as well as 2 emotional trauma certifications, inner healing accreditations, and a couple other things. So this is really for your education, edification, and encouragement. So what's our word for today? I'm going to start with yesterday's word. Yesterday's word was hostility. And this word that we dealt with yesterday really brought up a couple of things for several people who actually watched the video with us. And they really began to understand the effect that impatience has on hostility. And that is our word for today, impatience. Now, you might be seeing a lot of shadows today because my light ring decided to go kaput today. Amazon doesn't deliver in 4 hours or less. Not really sure why. Come on, guys, get it together. So hopefully that'll be fixed soon. So bear with us for the shadows today. So let's talk about impatience. Impatience plus hostility equals stress. We all need more stress in our life, right? Yeah, no. Now, what does impatience actually mean then? We're not patient. Well, that's a great way to use the word to define the word, right? It's also a restless or short of temper aspect, especially under any irritation, delay, opposition. Basically, when you have impatience, it's pretty much like herding cats or toddlers or 15-year-olds for that matter. How many more ways can they put on lip gloss in the morning? Basically, impatience is not being willing to wait for something or someone because you feel like what you need to go get done is maybe even more important. And I use that loosely because I doubt it's more important. I bet it's more because you don't want to be late, or it has more to do with how you're being triggered. Yep, I'll own that one. So there really is this tendency to be irritable or restless. So the German philosopher George Hegel said, impatience asks for the impossible, wants to reach the goal without the means of getting there. Isn't that interesting? So is impatience really a lack of patience? Let's talk about that for a second. According to Psychology Today, the word impatience is M-I-M plus patience, which on its face means a lack of patience, right? Defining the word with it. Patience seems like a substantial thing, but it's actually a specific mental process, right? By contrast, impatience is the thought to be nothing but a lack of patience. Maybe we have a couple things backwards. Impatience, as it turns out, is a very particular mental and physical process that gets triggered under specific circumstances, which then motivates specific actions of decisive action. So what are we really saying here? So what happens is we have a mental or physical process that gets triggered under a specific circumstance, right? And then from there, that then becomes this decisive action in the end. So patience is really the shadow term, signifying a lack of impatience. So the patient person simply wasn't triggered to impatience when others normally would have been. Or she found a way to overcome the impatience that did arise. Food for thought. So is it positive or negative then? Well, technically, it's both. Impatience can motivate us to reduce the costs of reaching our goal or to switch goals. And perhaps, for example, maybe you are in a not so healthy relationship and you've become quite impatient with the other person and whether or not they're willing to do some things that maybe they need to for a better healthy relationship. And that may motivate you enough with that impatience to say, you know what, this probably isn't the relationship for me, and make different choices. Same concept. Now, what are our effects on our body? Impatience is triggered when we have this goal and we realize it's going to cost us more than we thought it was going to originally, really. So Jennifer Riggs describes the effect in the brain itself. When impatience turns to frustration, right? You're tapping your watch, you're tapping your foot, you're like, come on, we gotta go, right? This is a good sign that you're beginning to switch off the prefrontal cortex, the area of our brain most responsible for that high level thinking, right? We've all talked about that frontal lobe. At the same time, you're activating our favorite A word. No, not that word. The amygdala, that word. The area of the brain most associated with reactivity, the fight, flight, freeze, faint, or fun, all those F's that we just love so much, right? So when the amygdala kicks in, what happens? It hijacks the frontal lobe. Now we're in hijacking places, right? Our thoughts and behaviors are frequently going to go to downstairs brain and be dysregulated. So stress hormones rise, anger sets in. Yep, you're getting the picture. So interestingly, as research has been shown, when we're feeling intense emotions such as anxiety, gonna be late, fear, I'm gonna miss out, or anger, I can't believe we're late again, our bodies send more signals to the brain that then heightens the experience and warps. And that's interesting. Warps our sense of time. So what does that mean? So 1 minute of waiting in serious frustration, in impatience, can feel like 5 minutes. There's an acceleration of time, isn't it? So isn't that interesting? I want you to think about that the next time you're impatient for a red light, or for your kiddo to get out the door, or for even your spouse to go home so you can get out the door, whatever that looks like. Kiddos putting shoes on. How long is that 1 minute wait for you? Control is another factor in how we experience time. When we feel like we can't control something or someone, like the speed of another driver or the internet for that matter. Boy, no one could control Zoom today. That was insane. The time will seem to pass more slowly. Now, what does that mean in the grand scheme of things? Well, impatience can cost us. It can cost us a lot, because if you're constantly feeling like time is now slowed down while you're waiting in this time warp, and then your prefrontal cortex is shut down and you're in downstairs brain, what's going to begin to happen? Your anger level is going to be able to rise. We're going to move into anger, long-term anger over the same repetition actions over a long period of time leads to what we talked about yesterday, hostility, which then can lead to coronary disease, which then can lead to premature death. Well, okay, I get it. That's a long journey, totally. But the fact is, impatience is on that path. And anger is also on the path to murder. Did you know that? 7 short steps away, actually. There's a whole ladder for it. So I'm just saying to you, don't even get on that ladder. It's not worth it, right? So what else can impatience cost us? Well, let's look at it from a life point of view. According to Jim Stone, a psychologist, if a child has no bargaining leverage, she's going to have to just stew in her juices waiting for Christmas. And that never makes anybody's life fun, does it? An impatient highway lane change can cause a deadly accident. Maybe you're trying to speed to get somewhere. My daughter and I have this little running joke when people decide to jet around us, and I'm not a slow driver. I won't tell you how fast I go, but I'm not a slow driver. Might be a couple of tickets in my past, but that's all we're going to say about that, okay? But the fact is, I'm going at least the speed limit, if not within my 5 to 7 miles over, okay? Then you have people in this great state that we live in, which has one major north to south highway, that think they need to go 180. Yeah, we love those people around here, especially in what we affectionately call the construction gap, which is about 20 miles of nonstop construction right now for the next 5 years. And when those people go around you, right, we just look at each other and go, man, they must have a really bad case of diarrhea. They got to get to a potty pretty quick. And we have to laugh about it. And that's the way we deal with that person's impatience and then our frustration about them almost causing an accident for us because they got to get somewhere. It drives us a little batty, right? So we have a little fun with it and we let it go. Another example for practicality for impatience is maybe blurting out your feelings before you've actually thought through things. And that can really mean a premature end to maybe a relationship, maybe going somewhere, maybe party that your kiddo wanted to go to because they decided to do something they weren't supposed to, using that impatience because you wouldn't answer them fast enough. Any number of those things. So really doing things before you think about them is what we're talking about there. And the last one that I wanted to mention to you is impatience can cost us when we switch away from projects that every time they get difficult, you leave and you really haven't gotten them accomplished. So maybe that's that book that God told you to write a while ago and you started and then you got sidetracked, and maybe this is your neon flashing slide to tell you, go get that book back out. Let's get it done, right? So how do we counteract impatience? How do we use it to our advantage even? All right, so let's talk about that first. When we use impatience to our advantage, we're leveraging it. First of all, I want you to think about, what is your goal? What's the goal of what is creating an impatient scenario for you? Is it to get to church on time? Is it to just get the groceries out of the car before the ice cream melts, which around here right now would not happen? But what is the goal that is not being met that is creating an impatient marker or trigger for you? Why did you think it was going to cost if you didn't reach that goal, or if you did reach that goal, right? Is it really that pressing? Is really what that's coming down to. What are some additional costs of not reaching that goal that you're now aware of that maybe you didn't think of before? And so are you really blaming others for those extra costs? So is it going to cost you $5 extra to park because now you have to park further away from wherever the venue is? What does that look like? Is it truly the other person's fault that you feel like is causing this impatience within you and creating this extra time blockage? And is it worth taking on the extra costs to teach them a lesson? Because really, who's that hurting? Your impatience level. Who's that hurting? And do you have any other options? Is there another way you could get to the venue? Could that person who created the time blockage be on their phone while you're getting there looking up spots that are maybe closer? Maybe they find one cheaper. Maybe you get in even faster because now you don't have to stand in the line to get into the venue. Variety of things there. Should you find a way to limit your exposure to any of the new options that come up that maybe cost you more? And are there ways to reduce the cost of reaching the goal? Which we kind of just talked all of those in one. Is it time to abandon the goal? Do you just not even go? And if that's the case, are you then going to stew about it? Because now you're going to be in downstairs brain, and that is not the place to be. So knowledge is power. And knowing how impatience works and gives us power, the better you're able to strike a balance. So you can stay the course when it makes sense, and you can change the course when that makes sense, right? So what if impatience is more frustration for you? How do you solve that frustration then? Awareness is the first step, always. We talk about that all the time, because you have to feel the frustration. You have to understand why you're frustrated. And really, you have to figure that out for you. It's really not that extra lip gloss that they need to apply, or the shoes that they could just take with them in the car and put on in the car and they're just not there yet, or you being late to get out the door. That frustration piece begins with, how can you best solve that problem moving forward in the future so you don't encounter the frustration? Not about them, but about you. And maybe that's having a conversation to say, hey, I need you to come home by 4:45, not 5, so I can get out the door and get to the bus stop. Could be as simple as that. Now, the other piece here is, when possible, can you have some compassion for the other person? Are they moving slow today? That's a big conversation that we tend to have in our house when I'm like, dude, you're like 30 minutes behind schedule now. And I do have a doctor's appointment that I have to get us to. And so what does that look like? She's like, man, I just couldn't get out of bed today. And so having those real conversations earlier on in the conversation, having a little check-in. We do Alexas here at our house. So she has one in her room. I have one in my room. And so as she's getting up and moving, we just kind of check in with each other. How are you doing? Is everything going okay today? How'd you sleep? And we have that conversation. And I know it sounds kind of silly because sometimes she has to get up way earlier. I'm like a 20-minute get together and get out the door person. She is so not. And so I'm still in the bed checking the email and stuff like that while she's getting herself all gussied up, right? So we have come to that conclusion of how that works for our family. But it took us a while to get there, and I had to figure out the triggers of the impatience, just like I'm sharing with you today. How do I solve those? And that's one of the ways that we solve them. Focus is another one. Focus on what you can control and plan for that. Just like I mentioned, maybe you could tell them to be earlier, that you're going to leave at 4:45. Maybe a neighbor could watch the kiddos while you have that extra 15 minutes to get to the bus stop. Breathing. Breathing is so important. I know you hear this all the time. Breathe, 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 breathe. And truly, there's so much science to just breathing. Do you see my shoulders go down then? I had like 3 stressful phone calls right before I started doing this. So, I should have breathed before I started this, right? Case in point. So breathing has the power to affect neural activity to the brain, particularly the cortex, which involves prefrontal cortex, your frontal lobe, and the limbic area, which includes our favorite A word, the amygdala. So try some slow, deep breaths and see for yourself the power it has to just calm your nervous system. You know, that nervous system is full of electrical energy. And so whatever you believe about energy, I'm not here to get into that conversation, because the fact is your body was designed and created with energy and God put it in there. So when we really identify that we have this energy within us and we're able to partner with it, becomes a whole nother ball of wax. It's so cool when we can do that. So from here, you can slow down, you can choose a different response, or maybe no response at all. Maybe you go sit on the couch and you open up your phone and you read some of the book on your Kindle that you've been wanting to get to. The last one I love. It's called Imagine. God gave us amazing imaginations. And in fact, when we do inner healing prayer, I ask God to open our imaginations, our eyes, our ears, our hearts, and our imaginations to everything that He wants to bring into it. Because man, when we make our imaginations available to Him and we partner with Him and we co-collaborate with Him, it's amazing what happens. So when we're being impatient, here's a thought. After a pause and a breath, right? Try imagining the outcome of acting or not acting on your impatience. You're actually visualizing it. And neuroscience research shows there is a link between patience and imagination. Isn't that fascinating? And that shows up in the brain. So simply imagining an outcome could boost all of your self-confidence and your self-control. Isn't that neat? So what are your wisdom verses today? Proverbs 14:29. Whoever is patient has great understanding. Whoever is quick-tempered displays folly. Psalm 37:7. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. He's not on your time schedule. I just want to let you know that. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways and when they carry out their wicked schemes. Don't fret. God's got a plan. And guess what? You're always on time in God's plan. Isn't that awesome? I have to tell you, I actually know of 3 different instances because we were running late, they saved us from an accident. One of which was just recently. Like, it was the longest line at one of the places that we can eat. And I was like, oh, girlie, we do not need to be here for this long. we have to get back for blah, 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 blah. And she's like, oh, but Mom, come on. We need dinner. I'll eat in the car. We'll get there. And then I'll go straight in. I'm like, oh, okay. So we sit in this line. It takes like 5 extra minutes than really they're normal. And they are like usually super fast. Like they should run the world with all customer service situations. And so we finally get through. And fortunately, we don't have any redos. Sometimes we do have that because of my kiddos' food. And so we get through and we're pulling out and I'm like, okay, I need you to start eating because we got to get there. And I couldn't quite figure out why at the light, it was like this really super long line to turn at the light left. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And so I get my green light, I turn, I get there, and then we see it. There is a 5-car super bad car accident literally that had just happened. And had we been that 5 minutes earlier, we would have probably been right smack in the middle of it. So I'm telling you guys, there's a reason that typically you are late. And so I just want to encourage you to honor that process that the Holy Spirit also has for you. And even though you had to go change your shirt 3 times and you spilled the coffee and you dropped this and you did that, it could be exactly what needed to happen in that moment. Okay? So your last verse, Colossians 1:11. May you be strengthened with all power according to his glorious might for all endurance and patience with joy. Patience with joy. So how are you going to use this new information about impatience? Remember, wisdom is the hearing, understanding, and application. And so here are your 3 questions. How has impatience been showing up in your life? Has it been positive? Has it been negative? And why? How much have you been buying into it? And how can you transform impatience in your life? How can you leverage it? Use it to your advantage. Remember, transform it by wisdom, understanding, and knowledge as you walk in it moving forward. Take the scripture, add your name to it. Whoever is patient. Janet is patient with great understanding. There you go. You're speaking that. You're declaring that over yourself. Go live, share with us. How has impatience been showing up in your life? What do you think you're going to do differently moving forward in the future? Breathing, using your imagination, controlling your focus, your breathing, all kinds of fun things, right? Tomorrow's word is indignation. And we thought about that one. I thought about that one. It's me, myself, and I. It's often a we here. And so indignation is really what happens when it's partnered with impatience. You're going to find out more about that tomorrow. So join us for more emotions, wisdom in your body, and register at kcrystalgriffith.com for more insights and your feelings wheel. Until then, you guys have a blessed day. Take care.